Good morning. Welcome to Community Voice. I'm your host, Keith Parris. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. Good morning, Jermaine. Good morning, Debo. Thank you. And let me again thank Mr. Debo for appearing there at Zion Hill Church yesterday.
It's not an appearance, Keith. I came to church, man.
Listen here, man. I heard you had a word for the people, man. And man, I was kind of jealous, man.
Well, you be working, man.
I know. That's why I was jealous. Like, man, I wish I could have came and saw you in your element, man. Because I know you can go. Because I saw you at Keon's homegoing service.
Oh, that wasn't nothing.
But when I saw him, I knew. I'm like, yeah, he can go.
Yeah, he was real flamboyant yesterday.
Flamboyant?
I don't know if that's the word.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you want to use
extra?
that one, brother. But no, extra is better than
No, I won't even say extra.
Animated.
Yeah,
that's the word I'll use.
Flaming hots. I don't think you want to use
I
that,
didn't say
brother.
flaming hot. Is that what flamboyant means?
Yeah, flaming hots.
Well, that's special K.
All right.
No, but a beautiful service. I really enjoyed it, man. I mean, although as I traditionally do, I sat on the furthest row in the church.
So you could tiptoe out.
But I didn't. I stayed the entire service.
Oh,
Now
nice.
you know that
I
deacon.
stayed for the benediction the whole nine. Yes, sir.
You did. That deacon that you was talking to about where to put your money.
Uh-huh.
That's Deacon Mike Jones.
Oh, that's him that drives by.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
that's him
was
that
messing
drives
him. I
by.
said, "You mean you want me to put my money
You
in
said,
there?"
"Where would put it?" Well, we just said put it. I don't care where you put it. Just put it. But no, I appreciate that, man. There's a lot of pressure. I know Michelle got sick, and she had hit me up in the morning. Yeah. She actually sent a picture to proof that she was sick.
Oh, she sent
Yeah, she sent a
verified.
picture. And, but so thank you for coming. It
Absolutely.
was and just it was part of, there's a book that Barack Obama wrote called the Audacity of Hope, and I was sharing that actually the inspiration for that was a message that Dr. Jeremiah Wright had done, and that was based on an encounter he had at a workshop with Dr. Frederick G. Sampson, one of the greatest preachers, man. Talking about somebody can drop some words.
Yeah.
Oh man, this brother could drop some words. And there's this whole picture that was done by an artist named Watts, I think in 1895, called Hope. And what it was a woman on a globe, blindfolded, with a harp with one string. And so they were looking at it going like, this is incongruent. Where does hope come from? And this is where Dr. Wright, he said after contemplation, he came up with the audacity to hope. Later changed it to the audacity of hope. And then, of course, Barack Obama took that, the audacity of hope, but the audacity to hope, which is what it seems like everything else is gone. Use the example of Pandora's jars and how she had closed the jar, covered the jar before the last thing got out. All the misery of the world had gotten out, but she closed the jar before hope could get out. And it was trying to make the argument, in spite of everything that we might experience in our lives, there's still hope, and don't give up hope.
Yeah.
And I didn't drop Jesse's line, keep hope alive, but it was hope that got our ancestors through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for many of us, if not all of us, it's hope that gets us through. So,
Keith, I told them this morning. I said, it's not often. I hear folks call in all the time, calling Sister Sharon. So she said, "Oh, preacher sure did preach today. Well, what did he speak on?" Well, I don't know, but I know he preached real good. See, I was able to tell you and them before you got here, the audacity, the hope. And then, of course, the bottom line, I paid attention and I was checking you out. I was trying to see if Keon was on to something, if he was a Christian or not, if he was really.
And
but, Keon was totally wrong.
I was sitting there when Keon had come. He was sitting over that section over in the middle there. He was just kind of there by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got up and I saw you when you come in,
mm-hmm.
and I said, man, Keon was sitting right there, that spot over to the left there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a lot happening, man. I mean, you would think feels like it's been 2 years of the Trump administration.
Wow,
And
man.
it's only been a month.
Yeah.
James Carville was on MSNBC, and he talked about, he said, you know what? You just got to let it hit bottom. And before people begin to realize the impact, and you're seeing it now in these congressional town halls they're having in red districts, where the congressmen are getting an earful, right? And a lot of these people voted for Trump. And but that's the reality. You know, you don't think it's going to impact you because they ran such a negative campaign on others that you always thought it was others, right? He ain't talking about me. But now your mama who's in a nursing home could be impacted to the cuts to Medicaid, right? They were talking about, like, when you talk about the military, and we always talk about military and the waste at the Pentagon, but one of the pieces that you have to get, the waste is usually in the procurement of weapons and weapon systems. That's where you see overrun, cost overruns, waste, that kind of thing. But then when you look at, let's take a town like Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Hopkinsville, Kentucky also has Fort Campbell. And Fort Campbell is this large military installation that abuts, well, actually, it's between both Tennessee and Kentucky, right there on the border. And when you look at cities like Hopkinsville, Clarksville, Tennessee, and then in the area, there's all the ancillary benefits of having that base open, that military installation open, because it's all the people that work, right? Not who are not necessarily directly in the military, but benefit from that installation being there. They're talking about in Georgia, where they're talking about cuts to the National Institute of Health. Well, in Atlanta, Georgia, the National Institute of Health generates a whole lot of money for the people that work there, and then all the ancillary support that goes along. So when people think it's a great idea, oh, there's waste in government, until you begin to see where the rubber hits the road, and then we find out just how dependent we are on government. You know, we there are people who will sit up and make the argument because let's say we do a school referendum. Well, that don't impact me. I don't have kids in school anymore. It does impact you, because if our children are not educated, then what does that happen? What happens, right? So there's a lot there, obviously paying attention to folks who it's worthwhile, and you fight. I am anyway. You fight depression and despondency because you just watch what's happening. That's just talking about what they're doing on the governmental level. We're not even talking about this whole idea of when we get rid of DEI, right? Diversity and inclusion, and how, you know, you have certain people who they will argue just because of how they look that they're DEI higher. And then when you look at people who are going to get jobs in the Trump administration, if there's not an example of people who are less qualified, but because they have the one thing that's currency for Donald Trump, which is loyalty and fealty, so then so it matters that you have people who know what they're doing in these positions. It matters when you sit up and say, hey, you know what? We're going to cut all these positions there at the Food and Drug Administration, until you realize that we're dealing with a possibility of an avian flu outbreak. And we don't have the people there to study it to be able to come up with the response, the medical response that we need to have when we're dealing with flu. Here's the other thing. People who are so-called anti-vaxxers, and, you know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was a proponent, he says he was, he's not anymore. I don't believe that. Well, so now there are people who are saying, well, you know what? I'm not going to take my kids in for measles and rubella. And so in Texas and Louisiana now, we have an outbreak of measles and rubella. Children are being hospitalized, and the majority of those folks were people who decided not to have their children vaccinated. You know, we had this argument last week. Dr. Williams was talking about the Scopes monkey trial. And the Scopes trial, which was in Tennessee back, I think, 1923, 1927, was this whole argument that they were having where they didn't want, and I put in quotations, evolution or Darwinism taught in schools. They wanted creation to be taught in school. And so there are people out there who push back on this idea of science, right? Even though your reality is that, everything you do based on your day-to-day is based on science. And so we push back on that, and we do it to our own deficit because we're pushing back on something. Here's the reality. When you get sick, you go to the doctor. And for the most part, in many instances, depending on what the sickness might be, it's treated. Know the difference. And it does not, and I'll say it again, I'll go out, it does not negate God because we have science. If anything, there might be an indicative of this term that we use in the religious business, that God is omnipotent, which means all-knowing, all science, right? That's that word, knowledge. So we need to be mindful of the consequences a lot of times. And I didn't go to medical school.
So I got a question for you, Keith.
Mhm.
Now, I know that we say science and things like that because that's like the information and stuff that we look up and then we find, right?
Mhm.
However, the knowledge and stuff that people get to go get this stuff comes from God. So if we really want to put a label on it, you can't think you wouldn't be able to do the research you do if it wasn't for God giving you the ability to do it. Now, whether you acknowledge it or not, it's on you. But for you to wake up in the morning and have your mind to go to the library or to have your feet to walk and things like that, that's the ability that God has allowed you to have.
Right. And one of the examples I gave yesterday was the woman who, they said with the issue of blood, who had a very just hemorrhaging, and none of the doctors could heal her. Now that's where hope kicks in.
Yeah, because it's funny that you use it, and I'm glad you did, because medicine didn't heal her. It was her faith. And her faith and hope is what got her, because when she touched him, Jesus responded and said, "Who touched me?" And so they was like, "Hold on, Jesus, there's a whole bunch of people touching you." But Jesus knew the difference between the touch of a person that's like, "Hey, Jesus," compared to a touch of, "Jesus, I need you. I need something from you." So what was in her?
I don't. Maybe this is the Catholic indoctrination I have, but I do not dismiss the existence of miracles.
Right.
What I'm saying though is that when you need a miracle, that means that you're in a severe situation where whatever we can do tangibly can't be done.
That's
and
exactly, Keith.
And so I think when we kind of look at that, but to be able to understand that in most instances, if people are able to identify, now there's some things that just don't matter. It's terminal, man. I mean, it is what it is. If you have pancreatic cancer, your survival is tough because pancreatic cancer, they haven't found any real treatment for pancreatic cancer. But can you remember at one point, if you had lung cancer, you can cancel Christmas.
Yeah.
And so most cancers now are not terminal. Most cancers now, people don't die from because of treatment. Where does that come from? That comes from science.
From science.
And as we learn more, we evolve more. Obviously, we're learning more that helps us then to, and basically what science is doing is helping us survive in this environment, right? Everything from shelter, to how we grow food, how we prepare food, all of that is. So I just wanted people to know you can have that conversation. I think we get intimidated because we might not have that level of formal education.
Yeah.
And then we might dismiss it.
Yeah.
But we really shouldn't. Understand that it doesn't make you any less smart because you didn't get a PhD from Harvard.
Right.
Just means that you didn't have that formal education track. But some of the brightest people I've met have never darkened the doorway of a institution of higher learning, because what makes us smart. Now, people will say that, "Keep you're smart." I don't know if I'm smart. I read a lot. Okay, so, but that doesn't mean I'm smart. It just means I read a lot. So I'm just saying to folks, we were having this conversation. Michelle and I had the conversation, and then a couple of my clergy brothers had reached out to me. There was an instance back in 2008. I want to say the State of the Black Union, 2008, 2009. And I think Michelle played the clip where Jeremiah Wright is going on about uneducated Black clergy. And he said anybody can turn a collar around, call themselves bishop. And I remember then, and I had the same reaction now, that's a level of condescension that educated people will have towards people who are not lettered. I know of some folks who have advanced degrees in theology. It doesn't necessarily make them insightful. It doesn't necessarily make them wise. It just means that they're well educated, right? And so the ability to be able to communicate with people on a level where you're able to share, where people can understand it. And that's always been the balance, because look, man, when it comes to things like philosophy, that's my lane, man. I mean, I get there, we talk about Socrates and Plato. I mean, but how do I glean the truth from that, and then where people can understand it and then apply it to their lives, right? And so that becomes the challenge. How do you get information that you have and do it at a level where people can clearly understand? I make it my goal from 8 to 80, right? That an 8-year-old should be able to understand what I'm saying just like an 80-year-old, because it's really the truth that we're trying to get from them. So again, thank you, Debo, for coming. Thank you for the good folks there at Zion Hill Church who endure my messages and sit through them. And, hopefully, and that's the other thing. Thank you for supporting the Reverend Leon Lonnie Love. Got a feeling everything's gonna be all right. Oh. The Reverend Leon,
man.
Whoever came up with that one, that's
That
a
was
great
hilarious.
name. Leon Lonnie Love. And Lonnie,
3 L's.
yeah, now remember we were talking about ethnic sounding names.
Mhm.
Lonnie, a black name. Lionel.
Yeah.
Now that's an ethnic sounding name. I bet you when you say Lonnie, you going, is that a black man? Is that a black man? Let me do this real quick.
Where would he be from, Keith?
Huh?
If his name Lonnie, where he from? Chicago?
He'd be from Chicago. He could be from Buck Tussle.
He ain't from Mississippi, though. That's
From
not a
Mississippi.
Mississippi name, is it?
Yeah, Doc, that sounds like Leon Lonnie Love.
Yeah, Lonnie Love.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the children yesterday, man,
Oh,
and
that
their
was great,
speeches
man.
and so forth. It was just
Yeah,
a great service, man.
Those kids there's something that you got to see in the children's church, dude. And I think that's, at my age, I love children's church. Children's church is so much fun, man, because first of all, it ain't like adult Sunday school. Okay. I mean, the questions that the young folks have, they're still learning.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with adult Sunday school is that we think we know. Yeah. And here we go.
They ever ask you something that stumped you?
Yeah. The little girl the other day asked me, we were talking about how pride, it was a contrast between pride and humility.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Black History Month. So she's saying, are you saying we shouldn't be proud? And when she was asking, we should be proud of ourselves, we should be proud of our history. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have to go back and do a little research on that young lady.
Well,
she
I
was
think
like 6.
Well, I think there's a difference between being proud and then being boastful.
Yeah, but for her, she's being very simplistic, right?
Right.
As well she should be at that age.
Right.
Proud, you just said proud. So how do you, now as we get older, the world is less black and white for us. And so now we understand there's nuance in language.
Right.
But for young folks,
Right,
they're
right,
still learning.
Yeah.
You're still kind of learning. You don't have life experience that nuances our language and how we speak. So when she asked that question, was a profound question. How can you be proud and then not proud? And it was
But are you saying that in a boisterous proud? When you said
no,
proud,
because
but
when
not
she
proud.
heard proud, because when we talked about it, we were talking about just what you two were saying,
Mhm.
boisterous. But at the same time, we talk about the pride we take in our history.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right.
See, but how it's worded is you can be proud and boastful.
Yeah, and you can be proud and not boastful.
Right.
Yeah, but I now what I'm gathering from that is proud in the sense that we endured it, but not proud because we had to endure it.
Well, we had to, and we did.
Right, but I'm saying that, but there's a part of you that's just like, why did we even have to do it? So I'm not proud of the fact that we had to, but I'm proud of the fact that we did.
Did. Yeah. And I think, but that becomes this idea of pride. Dr. Joy DeGru, when she was here a few years ago, and Dr. Myers, I see, a few years ago, she talked about how for Black folks, we never really wanted to brag on our kids, especially around white folks, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you grew up in my family, my mama never wanted you to get the big head, right? And so, you had this thing where Jermaine just discovered the cure for cancer. Of course, we should be proud.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But my mama would say, well, just pray for him.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was like, you don't. And I think that's that whole thing where is there a difference between being boastful?
Yeah.
I think the other thing is proud is beyond humility, where I'm too proud to get help. So that word could have been, and I didn't even think about how she was able to pull that, she being that young lady was able to pull that word out, but it really was thought-provoking. And here again, this is a 6-year-old asking that question.
It's making me think now.
Yeah, I mean, it was
even
profound.
with the scenario you just gave, that Jermaine discovered this, but then if I'm too braggadocious, if you will, about what he's able to accomplish, then I'm stirring up somebody else's ability to be envious or jealous or think that I'm boasting them up too high, boosting them up, so I get it.
But is that lack of perseverance on the other person's part?
No, I think it is. I think that there's a humility there. We do it to the point where we do it to a fault. I was very surprised when I'd come back, graduated from college, come home. I started working for the county. My brother worked for the county, what's it, about 30-something years and retired. And there were people who worked with my mother in medical records. Excuse me. And so they were working with me. And he said, oh, your mother, all she did was brag about you. All she did was talk about you. How proud. I'm going, Cliffy Parris? You're talking about Keith, right? So but that was something I remember having to ask my mother the question one time. I was good and grown. I said, Mom, are you proud of me? My mama's response was,
What's that?
I never told you I wasn't.
But you never say yes.
And I understand, but a lot of that really goes back to just the whole idea of enslavement and this idea that we don't brag on it. But there's nothing wrong with having pride in the accomplishments of your children, especially when you made the investment in that child.
Right.
There's nothing wrong.
But I don't want you to get to a point where you think you've made it because I'm proud of you. No, I want you to keep fighting and toiling and pushing.
See, but you know what?
See, my arrogance had nothing to do with that anyway. I was going to be arrogant regardless.
But Debo,
Yes, sir.
But when your parent tells you that makes you want to do more things so you can get more accolades like that from your parents. Because I remember when I was playing sports and playing basketball, when my parents came to the game, it was a certain amount of energy I had. It was a certain amount of, like, I don't know what it was, but it almost took me to the next level because I wanted them to be proud. I wanted them to hear, I wanted to hear them say, son, you did a great job. So every time I got that from them, when I looked in the stands and saw them, it took me to that next level so I can get more of that. So that kind of pushes you to the plateau of getting that from your parents.
And Dr. Myers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to hold because we're going to go to a break. So let me tell the story real quick. I was, if not the first, one of the first Black students probably in white Catholic schools to be elected president of student body. Big day, right?
That's
really
a
big day for me. Yeah, it was a big day. It surprised me. So I go home and man, I'm on cloud 37, right? I mean, I'm up there, man. I come home and I said, Mama, I was elected president of the student body at Dominican. You know what my mother said?
What's that?
You didn't wash the dishes. Get in there and wash the dishes.
Wow. It'd be
See,
tough
but
to
I
be
think-
Cliffy's
wait,
son,
wait,
man.
no.
Yeah,
but I
but you
think-
know what? And my feelings wasn't hurt because I understood
Yeah.
that maybe internally
Yeah,
she was.
yeah.
But you know, her whole thing is don't get stuck here.
And too, I think that a lot of that too was how they was raised back then, because they didn't
Exactly,
get that type of stuff from their parents.
Right. And then
from
I
their-
can say this, that when you talk about that affirmation that you get, one of the reasons why I love reading was the positive affirmation I got from my mom for reading.
There you
Kennedy loves to come to you and read to you because she sees
yeah,
the affirmation that you give her when she's reading to you.
yeah.
go. Mm.
And let me, and Debo, you met my brother Gary
Yes, I
yesterday.
did. Yes, I
and
did.
So Gary's always there. So let me thank Gary there for being there. You're listening to Community Voice. Dr. Myers, I'm going to grab you right after the break. We'll be right back.
You're inside Community Voice on WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back to Community Voice, and we have on the line with us Dr. Lakeisha Myers. Good morning, Dr. Myers. How are you? Good morning. We didn't lose him, did we? Okay, she can call back. I know she was calling in. I know they're doing their second film. There you go. Of their film series, Black History Month film series, tonight at 5:30 at the Good Hope Library. They will be showing the film A Question of Faith. When tragedy strikes three families after their destinies force them on a converging path to discover God's love, grace, and mercy at the challenges of their fate could also resurrect their belief. And so again, that will be, if she calls back, that'll be this evening at the at the Good Hope Library, 7715 West Good Hope Road. It's Black History Month film series, and they will be screening the film A Question of Faith there at Good Hope Library. So you get a chance. I know last week a lot of people went to see Punch 9, the whole Harold Washington's ascent to mayor in the city of Chicago. I had mentioned that Rhonda and I, we were down last summer, and we went to the DuSable Museum, and they had a whole exhibit there on Harold Washington, where they had a mechanical Harold Washington. They showed the film of his son, and then they showed the campaign. So again, this evening,
Who's hosting that, Keith?
that will be Dr. Lakeisha Myers, and she'll be there this evening at the Good Hope Library, 5:30 to 7:30. There'll be again. The film tonight is A Question of Faith. Let me do an honor and recognition of Savior's Day, which was held this past weekend in Chicago. Our Black History Month book of the day is Message to the Black Man by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is a seminal book where he really lays out the things, the foundations of the Nation of Islam. And just a little background on Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad was born Elijah Robert Poole on October the 7th, 1897. He transitioned February 25th. Wow, that's interesting. February 25th,
Tomorrow.
1975. So that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
He would make his transition. He was succeeded by, he led the Nation of Islam from 1933 to 1975. He grew up in Georgia, and he had made his way to Detroit. And he had, now this is interesting because on October the 7th, 1897, the 7 to 13 children of William Poe Sr., 1868 to 1942, a Baptist lay preacher and sharecropper, and Mariah Hall, 1873 to 1958, a homemaker and sharecropper. Elijah's education ended at the 4th grade, after which he went to work in the sawmills and brickyards to support his family. He worked with his parents as a sharecropper. When he was 16 years old, he left home, began working in factories and other businesses. And on March 7th, 1917, he married Clara Evans. Sister Clara Muhammad is a shero in Black history because when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was having some issues and he could not be public, it was Clara Muhammad who really kept the Nation of Islam going. And Clara Muhammad is credited with being, if not the first, one of the first people to advocate homeschooling, and she had homeschooled her kids. He and Sister Muhammad was part of the first migration of black families that moved north. The South was tough. I hear people all talk about the South. It was tough. And he moved his own family, parents, and siblings, Elijah and the Pools, settled in the industrial north in Hamtramck, I always get it, Hamtramck, Hamtramck, Michigan. Through the 20s and 30s, he struggled to find and keep work at the economy suffered during the post-World War I and Great Depression eras. During those years, the Muhammads had 8 children, 6 boys and 2 girls. While he was in Detroit, Poole began to take part in various black nationalist movements within the city. In August 1931, at the urging of his wife, Elijah Poole, attended a speech on Islam and black empowerment by Wallace Fard. Wallace D. Fard Muhammad, there you go. Afterwards, Poole said he approached Fard and asked if he was the Mahdi, the Redeemer. Fard responded that he was, but that his time had not come yet. Fard taught that black people, as original Asiatics, had a rich cultural history which was stolen from them in their enslavement. Fard stated that the African Americans could regain their freedoms through self-independence and cultivation of their own cultures and civilization. Poole, having strong consciousness of both race and class issues as a result of his struggles in the South, quickly fell in step with Fard's ideology. Poole soon became an ardent follower of Fard and joined his movement, as did his wife and several brothers. Soon after, Poole was given a Muslim surname, first Karim, and later at Fard's behest, Muhammad. He assumed leadership of the nation's number 2 mosque in Chicago. And I don't know if you all know, the number 3 mosque is here in Milwaukee. His younger brother, Khalid Muhammad, became the leader of the movement's self-defense arms, the Fruit of Islam, the FOI. Fard turned over leadership of the growing Detroit group to Elijah Muhammad, and the Allah Temple of Islam changed its name to the Nation of Islam. Elijah Muhammad and Wallace Fard continued to communicate until 1934, when Wallace Fard disappeared. Elijah Muhammad succeeded him in Detroit and was named Minister of Islam. After the disappearance, Elijah Muhammad told followers that Allah had come as Wallace Fard in the flesh to share his teachings that are a salvation for his followers. In 1934, the Nation of Islam published its first newspaper, The Final Call to Islam, to educate and build membership. Children of its members attended classes at the newly created Muhammad University of Islam. But this soon led to challenges by the Board of Education in Detroit and Chicago, which considered the children truant from the public school system. The controversy led to the jailing of several University of Islam board members and Elijah Muhammad in 1934, to violent confrontations with police. Elijah was put on probation, but the university remained open. And then from that point on, the nation began to grow. It began to expand. We know that by the 50s, then Malcolm Little had joined the Nation of Islam. He was later known as Malcolm X, and the Nation of Islam grew precipitously. And we know then in the early 60s, there was conflict between the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Malcolm X, which led to the estrangement of Malcolm X from the Nation of Islam, and then literally him being kicked out of the Nation of Islam. He went on to start when the messenger died in 1975, his son, Wallace Dean Muhammad, took over as the leader of the Nation of Islam. He moved then the Nation of Islam more to orthodox, more orthodox in terms of Islam. Obviously, there was a schism. I think he then started the World of Islam in the West. Later, Minister Louis Farrakhan acceded to the leadership of then the old Nation of Islam, and it kind of, and let me say this in terms, I won't say apex, but certainly in 1995, October 16th, 1995, at the urging and the call of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, is probably the most famous, the most attended march on Washington, the Million Man March. So again, today's book, Message to the Black Man in America by Elijah Muhammad. This is a powerful book. And, the perception of the Nation of Islam, one of the things that kind of put Malcolm on the map was a documentary done in 1959 by Mike Wallace called The Hate That Hate Produced. And he talked about the Nation of Islam, him being Mike Wallace, and that their premise was based on hate. The Nation of Islam's premise was not based on hate. The Nation of Islam was based on love for the black man. And it pushed up against white superiority, where if you love yourself, somehow that means you hate the white man. It doesn't. It just means that you love yourself. And to take pride in your accomplishments, to take pride as a people, to understand that, our history is more than the 400 years we sojourned here in the Western Hemisphere, that we come from people who were great people. Many of us are descendants of Bantu people. I gave yesterday some of the cultures where the word hope was used. The Akan group, which is in West Africa, to the Zulus, which were in South Africa, to the Swahili, which is in East Africa, that, we were such an expansive group of people with many, many different cultures. And in some ways, even though we were stripped of culture, we were able to survive, and some of the things in our culture was able to survive. And then certainly in what we call the United States of America, we then began to create our own culture. Tonight on PBS, I think at 10, Frontline is doing a whole piece on soul food and how soul food is in spite of after the war, the Civil War, when basically the Union soldiers came down and looted the South. They took the beef, they didn't take the pork. And so this is what's one of those real interesting intersections. When you talk about soul food, we always think of it as black people, but a lot of what we eat, poor whites in the South also ate. And so now you go to restaurants, they won't call it soul food, they call it Southern cuisine, because you find it. Anybody remember the Beverly Hillbillies when Granny would talk about what she was cooking? And fatback and chitlins, and hog maws. Well, that was what poor people were eating. And so it is. But and let me then finish this in terms of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When I was 14 years old, one of the guys, George, had texted me yesterday. One of the teachers at Parkman, Mr. Larry Gross, took a group of us to Chicago for Savior's Day. To this day, I'm still surprised my mama let me go. But I do remember going, and man, I wanted to join the Nation of Islam. Oh man, especially those brothers in the FOI. Oh man, that looks so. Come back and we talking, and the brother was talking to me about it. And I'm 14, right? So I still got to get my mama's permission to join. I'm 14, and he said, brother, you do realize we have a dietary code. Oh, really? Yeah, you can't eat pork. I said, by pork, do you mean bacon? You mean ribs? And I think at the same time, there was also then my that all happened that year. My what we call in our faith tradition, you get saved. So at 14 now, I've made a commitment to Christ. But one of the most exhilarating days of my life, we were at the Southside Armory there in Chicago, and to hear the love and veneration that the followers in the Nation of Islam had for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was just, wow. I'd never been where I experienced anything like that before, in my life. You could feel it. You could feel it in the atmosphere, and to get a chance to be able to. So thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mr. Gross. that exposure. And if people talk to me, you will find that I'm gonna use this big word. I'm a bit more ecumenical when it comes to different faith traditions. I subscribe to that there are many paths to God. The bottom line is that you get to God, because religion is culturally derived, and it's the environment and the culture that creates our practices and our belief systems when it comes to religion. I believe, as Dr. Tutu wrote in his book, that God is not a Christian, God is not a Jew, God is not Hindu, God is not Buddhist. God is so much bigger. And I think it was something that Dr. Williams said last week, where he said that, we put God in a box. That's the profound question that was asked, I think, in Life magazine back in the 60s. Did man create God, or did God create man? And it was a fascinating philosophical discussion that they were having around, and I hate to use this term, concepts of God and the belief in God, but I just believe that God is so much bigger than a lot of our little parochial things where we look at it. Well, he just talking about us. She just talking about us. God, and on Wednesday, I will have in studio the Reverend Dr. Trinette McCrae, one of my sheroes, as part of Faith, Justice, Politics. And we'll talk about that, but particularly the role of women in clergy and the struggles, the barriers, the obstacles that they have to overcome just to be able to preach and to be recognized fully, as clergy. And so we'll have that conversation as part of Black History Month. And the idea, because even then, it's a really interesting social dynamic in terms of the role of women in clergy. When I was at Dominican, one of the reasons why the Cincinnati Dominican sisters got in trouble was because they were really pushing for women to be clergy in the Catholic Church, and to be able to take part in Mass on a level, or even to be ordained as priest in the Catholic Church. In the Black Church, more than 70% of the membership in many churches, and probably higher, it's female, right? And so the question is, should there be a representation of the people there in terms of those people? I mean, I believe God calls whomever God wants to call, but there are others who said that no, there are things there and that pushes back. And we'll talk about, I think her name is Jorenna Lee, in the AME Church, and how she used to first recognize preacher where Richard Allen allowed her to preach, but at the same time not getting necessarily all the rights and recognition that comes along with ordination there. So, all right, phone lines are open. Oh my God, Roberta Flack passed. Yeah, wow, 88 years old.
Who's that?
Roberta Flack.
She passed.
Yeah,
Killing me.
two people that really Roberta Flack kind of put on our map is Donny Hathaway.
Absolutely.
And Luther Vandross.
Wasn't she instrumental with People Bryson also?
Yeah, she did some work with People Bryson because he's from the Maryland area. Right. She's a graduate of Howard University. I think she taught at Howard.
Got a joke for you, man, when we come back.
All right. Hey, the phone line's open, 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250. Again, the phone line's open. It's on Monday. I'd love to hear what you think. And then I need to do a bit of a cleanup on aisle 2. We'll be right back.
You're inside Community Voice on WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back to Community Voice. On Friday, we were having a conversation, and it got into because we were talking about the assassination, of Malcolm X, and DJ had brought up that that Martin was killed in the hospital, and I think he said that the family had sued the hospital. Someone sent me an article this morning by Craig McKee on Global Research. It says it's entitled "The Plot to Kill Martin Luther King Survived Shooting Was Murdered in Hospital," and this article was published by the Global Research Group on September 5th, 2016. So he gets in, and it's a book written by William Pepper called "The Plot to Kill King." We all know the shots and whether or not. Now, just so here's the cleanup part. I never said that I did not believe that there was a conspiracy to kill Dr. King. As a matter of fact, I believe strongly that there was a conspiracy to kill Dr. King. The other thing was, I think, and maybe, the DJ had said that the family had sued the hospital. The family did not sue the hospital. The family ended up suing a gentleman. Where is his name here? Let's see. Where's his name here? There was a guy, he owned an establishment, a white guy who owned an establishment across the street from where Dr. King was staying. And I want to give you his name because he was part of the lawsuit. Oh, here we go. The name of the place was Jim's Grill, and the owner was Lloyd Jowers, Jowers. He was later sued by the family because he admitted to paying for the assassination of Dr. King. And so I know there's back and forth, and there is a surgical aide who was she was there at the hospital that night, and she tells her son that that in effect she believed that Dr. King was killed in the hospital. Now, based on the severity of that gunshot wound that literally severed his spinal cord, his survival was. But even where she alleges that there were men in suits in the hospital who were spitting on Dr. King, and then she walked and there was a doctor or whomever was holding a pillow over Dr. King. Again, but I don't know how he would have survived that gunshot wound. So, but the conspiracy piece is true, and that precipitated the family to go and meet with James Earl Ray, the alleged assassin. The family came away with believing that he was not the assassin, and that there was this great conspiracy. Included in this was the FBI and others. And then, as it always happens, normally the cops who were there weren't there mysteriously. If you go to the National Black Civil Rights Museum there in Memphis, it's at the Lorraine Hotel. You can go across the street, and they have the rooming house that allegedly the shot was fired from, right on the balcony. Even people talking about the change of rooms. There was just a lot. And even afterwards, the official findings, the Reverend Ralph David Abernathy was not satisfied. And many people believe that it was a conspiracy, just like there are many who believe that Sirhan did not shoot Robert F. Kennedy for a whole lot of reasons based on forensics and other things. But hey, man, that's the 60s. It was turbulent. When you talk about assassinations and assassination attempts, everything from, we can start with Medgar Evers, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and even an assassination attempt on the life of George Wallace would put him in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
It was a different time. I was talking to a sister yesterday. We were talking about young folks and voting and how we seem to be a little bit more engaged. And I said that was because coming up as a child and coming to age in the 60s and 70s, we were so adjacent to everything that was happening. So it was kind of hard to not be aware of everything that was happening because it was just there in our face. Caller, welcome to the program. Good morning.
Yes, Keith, you were talking about the things they were doing with the getting rid of some of the what do they call them? People from Atlanta, Georgia. But anyway, where I'm headed with this is that they're having I was reading they're having a tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas City, Kansas, the largest one in the country.
That's correct.
I think it's 67 people that active cases. I think 39
Mm-hmm.
going to be looking into. And I've never had TB, but my cousin's ex-husband had it, and I mean it was a debilitating disease, and in fact it took out a lot of people during that before they had any cures in the 1800s and long before they had any cures. So that's something I don't think they're even thinking about. Some of these diseases. I've read something else where some of the federal government agencies are not even they're telling people who don't even mind what he's saying, Donald Trump, and because he's don't even pay any attention to what he's doing because they need those people, just like the people at the what's it called, the nuclear kind of thing, the ones they laid off, and then they want these people to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt they're going to be coming back because they just insulted the people, and we'll see how that works out. And but also that was and also you were talking about the question I had for you. You're talking about your mom and everything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good and everything else like that. But like you said, I think, yeah, she was always proud of you and everything else like that. I guess she didn't want to, boasting was kind of like prideful or something like that. And because I mean, look at me, and everything else like that. But also we had something. You were talking about the. What were you talking about? You were talking about that thing that you preached yesterday or something like that.
Yeah.
What were you preach? I was trying to remember. You were talking about something, and you were talking about. I heard the same thing, and yesterday at my church.
Yeah, it was the. Actually, I had used. As part of it was 2 points, but 1 point was at my alma mater, Mount St. Mary's University, and our crest is a logo that says Spes Nostra, which is Latin for our hope, which is a shortened version of Deus est Spes Nostra, which means God is our hope. And so we're talking about that. And then I talked about how Barack Obama and Jeremiah Wright had gotten to where Jeremiah Wright had preached a sermon called The Audacity of Hope. And that then taken from that, Barack Obama wrote the book, The Audacity of Hope. I really focused on originally where he was, Dr. Wright, was the audacity to hope. Right. In spite of everything, one still has the audacity to hope. So it was two things. God is our hope. And then to have the audacity to hope, even in the midst of the most difficult situations. I think in Romans, the 5th chapter, Paul talks about how tribulation leads to perseverance, and perseverance leads to character, and character leads to hope. So just talking about,
Oh, I'm sorry. But they were talking about. They also talk about faith too. They were talking about all these. There's a part in there I can't remember. There's some part where they were talking all these people who had faith, and they were talking about Moses. They were talking about one out faith, and everything else like that. They go to a whole list of Moses, Joseph. They go to Abraham, and they were talking about all these people who had faith, and that's what we're getting to. So they said you need to have you need to have faith too. Right.
Yeah, and I had
the same thing.
No, I had used First Corinthians the 13th chapter, the 13th verse, and I had stole it from somebody. It's the bottom line. It's the last verse in that chapter, but it talks about now abides faith, hope, charity / love, but the greatest of these are love. And I wanted people to know that even in our faith and between faith and love, there's hope. And really talked about or tried to build the argument that our people who, we had tribulation, but through our tribulation, there's perseverance. And through that perseverance character, we still maintained hope. And that, hope then becomes important for us. Right. And then our faith is our actionable piece, but is the hope is that thing where, and hoping is different than wishing. Right. And then how could we have the audacity to hope in the midst of tribulation, right? And it says something about in the human spirit there is this thing called hope, right? And how we every day, we deal with it. It was just more. Hopefully, I was doing it, in conjunction with our history then as enslaved Africans or descendants of enslaved Africans in America, but how our ancestors had hope. And
but then they have faith too. I mean, are faith and hope the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Are they two different things?
Well, no. I mean, faith and hope is really that actionable thing. I think the Hebrews, and I don't know if that's where you heard it yesterday, where they used Hebrews 11:1. Now faith, things not seen. Exactly.
Yeah, but you don't see. You can't because only reason you're a Christian minister. Now you have never seen God, but you've never seen you've never seen, and you never and Moses never. Moses did, but Abraham. There's some other people in there where they just kept on going, and he listed several people who had faith. These are faith that you have to have faith because you have to just trust that these things are going to happen because you have never seen them before. They're not out there in the present. You know what I mean?
Wait.
You see, they're out there existing. So you have to use faith.
Well, see, okay, with faith and hope, to me, it's two different things because you can walk into a room that you've never been in, right? And you can see a chair that is a chair, but you've never sat in that chair. But you believe in that chair has the capability of doing its job and holding you up, right? So you sit in that chair without questioning it. So that's having faith in knowing that this chair is going to do its job. When you hope for something, if you walk in that room and you see that chair is wobbling and that some screws is loose, you say to yourself, I hope this chair can hold me, because you see the evidence of it not been wavering, but it's a possibility that it can hold you. So you can take the chance and sit in that wobbling chair compared to you walking into a whole completely different room that you've never been in, sit in a chair that is a chair, and sit in that chair without asking questions.
Yeah, faith is confidence or trust in a person, thing, or concept. In the context of religion, faith is belief in God or in the doctrines or teachings of religion. So there you place your trust. But, I put my faith in you means that I'm putting my trust in you.
That I trust that
hope can be aspirational. Mm-hmm. It becomes a little bit more. But faith is just like where, is it James? This says the faith without works is dead. That, is an actionable piece that I have over and beyond. I act on my hope when it comes to my faith.
Right.
But you have hope. You have hope for the next generation, right? And so just understanding that little 4-letter word is so powerful. When you think about, there's another powerful word in our human existence called will. And it is, but that idea that there's still hope.
See, but that word will actually activate your faith, because you can say, I want to lose weight, and then you determine in your mind that I'm going to get up and lose the weight. So now you're taking your will and you're applying it to the faith portion of it, which now is putting work into what you want to do.
As an athlete.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're up against the wall.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking about
that
wall,
will to,
you got a will to get through. I mean, it is. So those things become important. Hope in our human existence, obviously faith, but then, human will, and that can be both a negative and a positive. Appreciate you, man. Let me get this next caller. Caller, welcome to the program.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm kind of baffled a little bit on that verse where it says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. Then where does the hope come in at? You say hoping. I'm kind of confused. Could you break it down?
Well, I think when you're talking about hope, is that thing. It's one of those things. I don't know how you quantify hope, but I mean, hope is an optimism. It's an aspiration, right? But faith then says that, whether I see it or not, I move towards that thing. So our hope will prepare us, propel us. That's the word I'm looking for. So that's all I'm saying, is that you have hope. I mean, that and then I just not everything, but I was just amazed at things that would kind of lead to this idea of hope, this, and certainly aspirational hope. I want better, or tomorrow's going to be better. That's a hope.
Yeah.
Now, my faith will say, well, get up tomorrow and I'll make it better, right? It kind of propels me to, and it's funny because I think I was attracted to Spes Nostra. I saw it, I must have been my junior year, senior year, I actually paid attention to it. And I remember asking one of the instructors, because by the time I got in there, Latin was no longer a requirement. And it talked about our hope and how sometimes, I hate to put it this way, all we have is our hope. I mean, it just seems, and so they work in tandem.
I guess they do, because if you substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen, so you keep hoping and keeping the faith at the same time. Is that what kind of like where it goes?
Yeah, but I think when we say unseen is not realized, it's probably, I don't know if I do that translation, it just has not been realized. I believe it's there, right? I don't see it, but I believe it's there. Like, I always had this thing in my mind, like, man, what if I drove to New York City and it wasn't there? But I have faith and believe. And then part of that is I've seen pictures of New York. I mean, but it is, I'm trying to say it in such a way where, faith is trust. Hope is aspirational belief. I put faith in Jermaine. I have faith every day that Jermaine is going to do what he does in order to make this program successful. Whether I express it or not, it's there.
Right.
Now, I hope I have a great program.
Right.
But, so it's different. We don't want to get to the point, but they do work in tandem.
Can I say this? I believe that faith is almost like before you get there type thing, if that makes sense. So let me explain. So if I say I want to lose weight, I got faith that I'm going to lose weight because I said it, right? So I'm speaking it into actions. However, in order for me to lose weight, I have to get up and do something. So faith without works is dead. So I would never lose weight.
Faith has to be a verb.
So faith has to kick in. It has to kick in, which then causes your mind and your willpower to activate to what you said. So that's the evidence of things not seen, because right now I haven't lost the weight yet, but I believe I want to lose the weight. So I don't see me in my 200 body frame. I'm still in my whatever 270 frame, right? So I'm hoping, I believe I want to lose weight, but in order for that to happen, I got to activate and put it to use and put it to work so I can lose it. So then once I lose it, it's like now I see the results of me having faith. The results of me having faith, which then kicked in my willpower for me to lose the weight. Now I'm seeing the results of my faith.
You know, and I would not advise this to any 19-year-old who has post-secondary education aspirations. But my trip to Emmitsburg, Maryland, a place I'd never seen. I get there, and thank you, Pastor.
God bless you.
Bless you. Bless
Put
you.
this in my pocket, unless you put an offer.
But I went to the place, basically, I'd never seen it other than the pictures that was in the catalog, to the point that when I got there, we drove past the, which is now the National Fire Academy. We drove past St. Joseph's, their residence there for the sisters. I'm trying to think, Elizabeth Seton Hall. Elizabeth Seton had started a order of sisters. They had this huge provincial house, and then they had the women's college, which was St. Joseph's College. And I drove by, and I'm like, dude, you drove past the school.
Wow.
And he's like, no, that's not the school. And then I drove up and actually saw Mount St. Mary's. There were $90 in my pocket, a one-way ticket from Milwaukee. No financial aid at that point, no place to stay. Talk about a faith. Again, I would not advise that to anyone. Yeah. But then it's like when my mom when I went off to school, my mom had hope that I would benefit from a college education. So they're about the same. Thank you, caller. Welcome to the program. I don't know if I explained it any better. Caller, welcome to the program. Good morning.
That line on the drop. Let's go to the next line.
Caller, welcome to the program. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Parris. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum to you, brothers.
All right.
Yes, sir. I was listening to you just a moment. Thank you, Mr. Debo. Some people used to be like, you shouldn't say thank you when someone returns the greetings. I don't know. Anyway, you all were just speaking about faith and hope. And I agree with what you were saying, whereas hope is more inspirational or aspirational, and faith is more motivational. Faith will make you move. Hope can or will inspire you, but your hopes can be dashed. Your dreams and your desires can be thwarted either by self or by the lack of the nurturing of the self. And depending upon what is nurtured of the self can determine the outcome. Whereas even though you might have your hope, you might hope for a thing, but you lack the faith in your ability because you have not been properly prepared to manifest those particular results. And we as Black people have had blocks like what's that wall, the Great Wall of China, built in front of us, especially as Black men, and depending upon the Black man's disposition or his manner or mannerisms, he might be labeled as this or that and the other, and he's Black. And that's because the Black man is to be made a ruler which conforms to his actual nature. And what we have not had for over 50,000 years or 50,000 years plus, we will regain again, but we must be properly prepared. And Mr. Parris, you cited the book, Message to the Black Man in America by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I wanted to ask you, are you familiar with pages 95 through 97 when it is titled The Bible and Holy Quran? Mm-hmm. I don't want to go into reading it, but as many scriptures, at the end of page 95, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we, the so-called American Negroes, are mentioned in the New Testament under several names and parables. And the two that he named are the parable of the lost sheep and the prodigal son. That's the book of Luke. And you know the wherever to find it because
Luke
you were
15,
familiar with
1
it.
and 11.
Yes, sir. And then on page 96, actually from that page 95, going into 96, where he speaks of before the coming of Allah, we being blind, deaf, and dumb had mistaken the true meanings of these parables as referring to the Jews, these people who call themselves the not Ashkenazi people. So anyway, not to belabor or be longer than anyone else, our people who have been transformed and twisted into all manner of things other than what God Allah actually wants us to be. And listening to my big brother, student minister, Ishmael Muhammad giving the Savior's Day address last night. I was not there in person, but I was there virtually. So I heard what he had to say, and it was given by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I think that we might be in a situation whereas we're about to be forced to go for self because of the person who seems to have, his heart has become hardened, just like the Pharaoh of Egypt of the past. And that's why his body was preserved as a reminder to this world what God is going to do to those who are defiant or defy his will for us as a people. So happy Savior's Day. And thank you for taking my call, Mr. Parris.
You're welcome. And let me, there is a song by Jonathan Nelson called Manifest. And I told someone the two coldest words I ever heard in an opening line of a song, other than never learned to swim, was pregnant possibility. Ooh. I did.
You could preach a sermon on that thing,
Pregnant
man.
possibility.
Pregnant possibility.
It just every time I hear
Can
that
I
song,
tell
I think about pregnant
Can I tell my joke,
possibility.
man, before we go to break?
Hmm?
Can I tell my joke before we go to break?
Oh yeah, let's do this. Tell you, Joe.
Now listen up, now closely. Now listen at me now.
Get on the button, Jermaine.
Yeah.
Y'all know what those folks listen at me now. Now I want y'all to listen at me. So this guy and this girl, they sitting around talking. So she says, honey, just hypothetically, let's say we were in another country, another land or whatever, and I died, and it would cost $500 to bury me there, or $30,000 to bring me home. Let's just say Jerusalem. We'll just use Jerusalem. So the guy says, huh? She says, yeah. So we're in Jerusalem. I die. It's going to cost $500 for me to be buried there and $30,000 to ship me home. What would you do? He says, well, I'm going to ship you home. She says, why did you say $30,000 ship me home? He says, well, about 2,000 years ago or so, there was a guy that died in Jerusalem and he rose in 3 days, and I'm not taking that chance.
Man, you had us wait all that time for that, man.
You get it, Keith. Did you get it, Keith?
I got it, but man, it was trying.
I gotta go home, and so do you.
Hey, maybe I should have said that joke.
I ain't gonna laugh.
I got to go home to Sports Center, so I'm good.
Taking a chance of you rising in 3 days.
Yeah. Hey, Doc, you ain't gonna rise no more. You go home after the show.
Let's see if you get up.
Right. From that knockout.
Yeah, man, Jesus said, I can't call nobody. I gotta call Debo. Because if I say rise, everybody getting up. Everybody. You listen to a Community Voice. Call out, see you. I'll grab you right after the break. We'll be right back.
Riverside Community Voice on WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
Not anymore. Oh, okay. Yeah. Caller, hey, how about them Bucks?
Man, hey, like I was saying, like I was telling some of these guys.
Here we go.
Hey,
Here
that
we
proves that I was right from
Here
the
we
beginning.
go. All right.
He's been saying it, though. He has been saying
Let's pick it up after. Caller, welcome to the program. Good morning. Good morning.
And I think line 6
Was line 6? Come out. You can call back and put it on line 5. All right.
But yeah, man, like I've been saying, man, I think by them getting younger and faster, with Giannis and Dame, those two being the foundation, and you building around that, you got shooters, you got quick, athletic people. I think that they can beat the Bostons, man. I think.
Well,
that
let me
they can beat the
critique it.
Cleveland. Mhm.
All right. Now, of course, they beat the Heat.
Yeah,
For Kevin Porter Jr.,
I like that too.
learn how to feed the post when Giannis is in the post.
And
He
quicker.
struggled.
Yeah, though, he got to
he
learn to
struggled.
move. Yeah, because
you
he's trying to
gotta-
figure out.
Ain't nothing to think about. Giannis in the post, give him the ball.
And I think too, he has to fix his whole directional passes, because he try to, like, his passing lanes is not clear.
He's moving and
Yeah.
he's still indecisive. So that can be fixed.
Yeah,
Jericho Sims,
I like him.
nice size, but he's an offensive liability.
Yeah,
So how they use him becomes real important, certainly for the defensive piece,
yeah.
to be able to use him. I'm trying to figure out why your boy is getting so much run.
Who that, TP?
No, AJ Green. Why is he getting so much run?
Well, one, they know that once he gets going,
Once he gets going. Not once. If he gets
well,
going.
if he gets going,
Okay.
if he gets going, he's a problem. However,
If is a big word.
I think as well too, man. I think that some of the calls when that the refs call on him is because of
He's a defensive liability.
but Keith, but look at this.
And you gotta, if you're gonna be a defensive liability, you need to drop your 16, 18.
But
Because
Keith,
Tyler Hero was killing him.
but listen, man,
Well, he was killing everybody.
he was killing everybody. This guy had 40 something.
Yeah, I know 40.
But I mean, though, he was doing that because his pops was in the front row too. Those pops and his mom was sitting right there. So I mean, though, you gonna play.
But he's like feast of famine, boy. He threw up some air balls. He threw up some air balls, man.
He did, yeah.
But no, I think that, and I got to look at what their schedule is looking like.
Man, I think they got the 5th hardest schedule closing out.
Bobby Portis gets back just in time for the playoffs.
4 games.
Yeah. So, a lot of people still tripping on that. That's a self-inflicted wound there.
Yeah, but I honestly think that to keep the swelling down, are you playing a back-to-back?
I got that.
So,
man.
I mean, though, it's like me playing.
But if they give you a 25-game suspension, that means.
Yeah, but it actually came out that it was those inflammatory. Yeah, but it's something that's really not illegal on the market.
Yeah,
it's just illegal for the NBA.
But that's what I'm saying. Whoever his physician is, whoever the team physician, here's what you can take, here's what you can't take. They know the league drug protocol. They know it, right?
Right.
It's
he can't go to the neighborhood pharmacy. Hey, give me something for he because
see. But I think too,
over the
with
counter
Tylenol and stuff,
anti-inflammatory might have something in it that he shouldn't have.
Yeah, but I think that was a painkiller, wasn't it?
That was a painkiller.
That's a painkiller. So
I get it, but I'm just still saying, who gave it to him?
It was a doctor, obviously.
Yeah.
That.
So why should he have to? You know what I mean? Take the repercussion, even though they are giving the rules. But if the doctor give you something, and because I know how I am, that when I play ball 2 days in a row, like, man, I'm flaming up.
But you can do the over the counter. You can also go in and doctor. And obviously, when you go to the team physician with a injury, he or she is able then to prescribe drugs to him. So I don't know if he did that outside of the team's protocol of what would be acceptable. I know that drug is an opiate, and that's probably what they're testing for. And whether or not it is, can anybody tell me they still test for marijuana?
No,
That's what I thought.
No.
Yeah.
They don't.
So
So you can smoke weed in the league now?
well, because you have teams and states and cities where it's legal.
where it's legal. Yeah.
So
You know?
it could be medically.
No, I mean recreational.
Yeah.
I mean you got
Recreational.
Illinois,
Yeah,
you got
Illinois.
Minnesota,
Vegas.
certainly Colorado,
Oh yeah.
California,
I'm paying
New
you-
York.
I'm paying you millions of dollars. I get to speak on that, don't I?
No, because
Well, because marijuana is never the issue, man. The issue for the NBA wasn't marijuana; it was cocaine.
man, do you know how many players after they win the championship go have drinks? I mean, you drinking in the
Alcohol.
locker room. But listen, alcohol is worse than weed, first of all. Secondly, with the alcohol put weight on your body. We
No.
don't.
Why you,
Well, we can,
Well, we can't because you get the munchies.
but I think that, and I know that was, but the issue in the '80s and the '90s wasn't marijuana.
It was
The issue was cocaine.
Lynn Bias and all them
Oh
cats.
man, Lenny Bias, who's my boy, Michael Ray Richardson, the
Michael
Sugar.
Ray, yeah.
You know, I mean, there was the Orlando Woolrich went on a binge.
Orlando
He
Woolrich.
disappeared for 3 days.
Yeah.
Said he couldn't find his way to. He would.
Did they have a game or something?
Yeah. Dude went on a binge. So cocaine was really that's when they really went in and began to tighten that up. But I didn't think they tested for marijuana because it's legal in a lot of the states that they play in. It was like the dude that just got released from Russia.
Oh yeah.
How much weed did he take in? It wasn't even what, a quarter ounce or something like. Wasn't
Yeah.
even that much weed.
yeah.
But you know when they want to get you,
Oh yeah, they gonna get you.
they're gonna get you. That's like Brittany Griner. You know,
Yeah.
once they want to get you,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a whole propaganda thing for them that then you can exchange this dude
For
for a
money.
Russian spy.
Yeah.
You know, but
No, she had a pen. She had a pen. Though. She had a
probably
vape pen.
She had a vape pen.
She had a pen, and she forgot that it was in her luggage. So when
Well,
they
she had probably been bringing it in before,
and didn't get caught
and
another
or
time.
they didn't care,
Yeah.
and then they saw an opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that.
Yeah, so
wow.
you know it when you start talking about geopolitics, a lot of times, a lot of these things. Now, some of these people that they get are in fact spies,
Yeah.
right? And they'll say, "Oh, I'm there as a missionary." No, you're a spy.
Yeah.
The Russians know you're a spy. Look, America knows where most Russian spies in this country are. They got them under surveillance. And when you say spy, a lot of times it's just basic intelligence that you pick up.
Yeah.
Like they're doing this over here, they're doing this over here. You know, people that are attached to the embassy a lot of times, you know, are they attached to the CIA or are they attached to the State Department? But they're gathering information. You know, that you cultivate sources in those countries because, you know, they tell you the most reliable intel they have is human intel,
Yeah.
right? That you're able to go in. But now with surveillances, I'm watching this movie or just a series that they did on Netflix with Robert De Niro, and it's Day Zero. And man, they show you just how much surveillance now with cell phones,
Oh yeah.
where they're able to track.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so they were able to show who this guy had talked to, all the cell phones that had called into his number.
Mm.
You know, so you know, a lot of this is obviously technology, but it's also the Patriot Act, which allowed a certain level of surveillance. And there's always been surveillance of American citizens, but certainly under the Patriot Act put it on steroids.
So I wanted to ask you this because I remember it was this whole big court thing when Bush was in office, though, when they did the surveillance thing. I think it was in Virginia or somewhere like that with them guys, and it was a lawsuit. And then that's when I noticed when they changed over the televisions going from being, you know, like you had to have an antenna and all this other stuff, high def, right? Because it switched up. And this is just me. I looked at it because right after that lawsuit is when this went into play. So I'm looking at it like, well, this is a way that they can still listen in because you can listen in through smart TVs and devices and all that stuff and not know.
Well, this is just so you know. By law, the CIA cannot operate
By law.
within the borders of the country.
By law.
By law.
Right.
To listen to your phone call, they would need a warrant. For people who are dealing with international, remember it was Flynn. They overheard conversations he was having with Russian operatives.
Mm.
They weren't eavesdropping on him. They were eavesdropping on the Russian operatives, which is illegal.
Mm.
But now you're an American citizen calling.
Yeah.
And so that's how they were able to pick up his phone call, because they were monitoring the people that he was talking to.
But do you think, man, that there's loopholes in that? Because again, with smart TVs and all this other stuff, it's still
Well, your TV
recording.
is listening and watching you. Your phone is listening and watching you.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing about GPS, which is a benefit. I always, I love Family Guy, and Chris and Stewie was at a party, and Stewie, either it was Chris, it was Stewie. No, it was Chris who had a pager.
Mm.
And so Stewie's giving him a hard time, like, dude, you got that old technology. And he said, this is analog, so they can't track me.
Right, digital, they can track.
So then Stewie said Chris Griffin, and it must have been like an Alexis type device.
Mm.
And you can see the people who are doing the surveillance say, we got him. Right? Because, and even the October 7th attack.
Yeah.
They were analog. They didn't do any, because the Israelis are monitoring any digital thing that they're doing in terms of their surveillance. And so they did it all analog. Go to a payphone.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the way that they were. So you fly, under the radar. Now, GPS is a benefit, but it can also be, I tell you, when Rhonda went to Niagara Falls she did the Sojourner Truth. They do like a marathon, half marathon. She did the half marathon. So they drove to Canada. And there's we call it the stalking app.
Yeah.
But you can put an app on your phone and her phone. We sync the phones.
Yeah.
And I was able to follow her entire trip.
Yeah.
I knew when she crossed into Canada.
Yeah.
Right? I knew when she got to Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Because of the GPS.
So you could put an air tag on a person's car.
Oh yeah, you can. There is. That's what somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. You could put an air tag car in the luggage and the person's pocketing it, and they'll never know, and you can see on your phone exactly where they're at.
So that technology, even though it's a benefit, because I know we can just put an address in. I could ask my godson, what's the address? And he'll put in the name, like from taking him to the barbershop. He don't know the address, but he can put it in. The GPS positioning comes up, and then it gives you a map and the address of where you're going.
Yeah.
I was listening to who was I listening? I don't know if I was listening on WNOV, and they were having this conversation last week on Kwaku's show, and they were talking about was it Kwaku? No. It was Cora Pleza's show, and she was talking about remembering. You guys were talking about phone numbers, and how many phone numbers we actually remember, and how many of us just go to the phone and push one because that's mom. It is because back in the day, remembering phone numbers, that was then was Milwaukee became its own zip code. I mean, not zip code, area code. So anything we do outside of Milwaukee County is 262. I think the one up north.
Yeah.
Is it 608?
608
in Madison. Right. So now when you even dial, you have to dial and put in the area code.
Yeah. Because
there's so many phone numbers out there, and this is how so the technology is
because man, I still remember my phone number from when I was a little boy. That's because it was drilled into us, though it was taught to us. So when they used to ask us, what's your phone number? 414-445-1810. I still remember that, being 10, 12 years old, that we had that number forever.
Yeah, but now here's what I can remember, though. I can remember addresses that I lived at.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
3371 North 5th Street.
4116 North 21st, right around the corner.
I lived at 3371 North 2nd Street.
Is that right?
Wow.
2448 North 4th Street.
Oh,
2558 North 4th Street.
3276 North 26th Street, and then 1527 North Marshall.
Yeah,
Now, I don't
lived
remember
in
the
one
address
place.
me and Rhonda lived in prior to 2815.
Now,
You
in
don't
my
remember?
adulthood, I can't remember some of the houses I lived in, but my childhood, we stayed in one house, and I believe, well, yeah, I know for sure because I was 36 to when they moved.
You was 36 when you moved out.
No. I was 36 to when moms done moved out. Man, I jumped off the porch when I was 17, brother. No, but I was 36 to when moms moved out the house, and that's all I remember. Mom and daddy and them living in that house. So
You know what's
30 some
crazy?
years.
I was born in 53212. I spent my entire childhood, teenage years in 53212. I was born in Mercy Hospital, which was right on the corner of 2nd and North.
Yeah.
It's that back with the old DNR building
Second and
there.
North, yeah.
Right there, there's a vacant lot.
Yeah.
I was there. And then me and my mom lived on 2nd and Center.
You and your mom, the other kids weren't born yet?
Gary was down south.
Okay.
And then we moved to 4th Street, which was still in 53212. Then we moved to 5th Street, was still in 53212. And then my mom moved into 10 my sophomore year in college. So
I stayed in 10 all of my life until they changed it. Remember when they remapped?
But you said you were down
And
on
7th,
2nd
but
Street.
that was my great grandfather's
Okay.
house. I stayed with him for a period, but
That down there by Mr. Watkins' store.
right.
Hey, let me thank everybody who's been part of the program today. Debo, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jermaine, thank you. Callers, we thank you. The good Lord willing, creek don't rise. Hope to talk to everybody tomorrow and go from this place in peace.